Hi guys, welcome back to another episode of Rhythm and Views. You join me in my lovely new studio here at the Garage Studios in South Shields. Now I'm sure some of you may recognise the room as something quite nice. I got myself set up. This is going to be the new space for recording content, and as I keep threatening in every video, hopefully now consistent content. In this video I basically want to talk about cracking cymbals. Now I'm sure at some point or another we've all cracked them or damaged them in some way. I actually, for the first time only just last week, quite ironically, cracked my rather lovely 18-inch thin Paiste Rude. Absolutely gutted. I had this video in the diary for quite a few weeks, considering I'd been playing these cymbals for I think about 6 years, had absolutely no problem with them, looked after them well, you know, angled them in the right way, we'll talk about all that sort of stuff. And then I went and cracked this just a week before I was about to record this video. So there's two ways in which I think I've actually cracked it. I'm going to run through all the possible ways and explain why I've kind of narrowed it down to them. I hadn't realised that I'd cracked it until the night after when I was setting up the kit, took it out the case, put it on and went, oh my God, what the hell is that? And then as I've continued playing it, obviously it's got worse and worse, started to grow and find its way through the cymbal. And as it does that, the sound, the volume is just, you know, has dropped dramatically. There's hardly any sustain there anymore. It doesn't ring out, it doesn't cut. And that was, you know, even just from the point in which it was a tiny little crack, the sound difference was pretty horrendous. So I am on the hunt for a new, probably going to stick with another 18, I think. I've been looking at another 20, got a 20 here, rides at 20. I normally play with the Tombstone Crow stuff, normally have the 2900, which I bray about on. And so I'm not quite sure what I'm going to get to replace this. I do love the Rudes, but I'm possibly looking at something a little bit darker for the likes of Tombstone Crow and some of the heavier stuff, so we'll see what happens. But let's jump into how you can stop and prevent cracking cymbals. So number one is actually protection on the cymbal stand. So the first thing that you need when you're putting a cymbal on is cymbal sleeves, cymbal felts, and preferably a lock nut as well to actually keep the cymbal on there. Very, very important. So there's nothing worse when I turn up to a venue or I'm using someone else's drum kit, or I turn up to a rehearsal room and they go, yeah, kit's there, help yourself, hardware and everything supplied, and then there's bare cymbal stands. Nothing worse. It's the reason that I take all of my own cymbal stands just to be sure. It also means that, you know, I have no issues moving anything and all that sort of stuff. So it's a little bit convenient as well, but means that I can look after the cymbals much better than anybody else. So always really, really important. The reason being is that when you're putting the cymbal on, if you're putting cymbal, which is made of metal, against a metal, you know, tube, you're putting the cymbal on top of that, and then you're going to hit it. You're going to transfer a lot of energy powering through that cymbal. And if that energy is then met with a piece of metal in the middle, and the cymbal is constantly, you know, metal on metal, not going to be good. What do you expect is going to happen? It always surprises me when drummers are shocked that they've cracked their cymbals, and then I look and I see a bare cymbal stand and I say, it is your own daft fault. Cymbal sleeves, super important. Felts, super important. You always want to make sure that you have a felt on the top and bottom so that there's, you know, as the cymbal moves, it's not hitting against the plastics, you know, even still hard enough. The felt allows it to absorb that a little bit. And a lock nut, I can't stress enough how important this is. One, it stops the cymbal from falling off the stand, but it also lets you tighten it or slacken it off depending on how much give you want the cymbal to have. I always recommend giving the cymbal enough to actually move for a start. The amount of drummers that I see cranking them right the way up, hitting the cymbals, and the cymbal, you know, doesn't even move. It does not make any sense to me. Not only are you cutting the sustain on a cymbal, which some drummers might want, but you know, you're cutting the sustain, but you're also cutting the actual amount of movement that the cymbal can have. And when it's tight and you're trying to transfer the energy through that and you're bringing about on it and hitting it quite hard, as most of us drummers do, you're going to cause a lot of damage. And as that energy transfers, and again, metal on metal, not good, you're going to start to see a lot of cracks. So the second thing is actually the angle of your cymbal. So how you are actually connecting with the cymbal, how you are hitting it. Very, very important. So I'm going to sit down to demonstrate this one. What you basically want is you want the cymbal to be angled towards you, angled down ever so slightly. So you don't want the cymbal to be flat, and if it is, you need to be catching it on the top. If you're sat up tall enough, perhaps that's all right, but you don't want to be catching the cymbal right on the side. Very, very bad. It doesn't allow it to transfer the energy in the way that it needs to. You need to catch the cymbal on the top, striking it down, and then that allows one to get the better sound. I don't know why anybody would want to be hitting a cymbal here. It just does not make any sense, but soon enough, if you do that, you will get a lot of cracks around the side. Not good at all. Same with hi-hats as well. You want to be making sure that you're catching them on the top, you know, in a way that obviously articulates well and all that sort of stuff. What I'm trying to say is you don't want the hi-hats, you know, up here and have to be hacking at them from the side. It just doesn't make any sense. You're of course going to do damage like that, regardless of how hard you're hitting them. And the same for rides as well. Now I have my ride set up in a ridiculous angle. I'm checking on the camera that you can see it there. I have it angled like Nick McBrain from Iron Maiden. I got this one from him. Surprisingly super comfortable when I tried this out all of about 8 or 9 years ago, and I've pretty much kept it for a lot of the stuff that I'm playing. But I'm catching the ride cymbal, the bell of the ride cymbal, sorry, really, really well. Obviously I'm not going to be catching the sides, and then when I'm hitting the outer sort of shell of the ride there, I'm catching that really, really well as well. What you have to consider if you're a drummer that is using a ride cymbal and you're using it as a crash as well, make sure that you're actually purchasing a ride crash or a crash ride. But also make sure that it's thin enough to be able to actually withstand and flex that energy. I'm going to talk about that in a little bit. So yeah, I've got this angled rather ridiculously. Granted, not many drummers find this comfortable at all, but the most important thing is that I'm not catching the ride cymbal on the side of it here. And if you do have it flat, if you're a normal drummer and you have it flat, as I do quite a bit of the time as well, I have it low enough that I'm not hacking at it from the side and causing damage, because ride cymbals of all of the cymbals are probably the most expensive and are the last thing that you want to be putting cracks in. So moving on to number 3, I talked about the thickness of the ride cymbal there, and that is actually something you need to take into consideration for all of your cymbals. So you need to think about, the first thing is, what are you actually going to be using your cymbals for? What kind of sound do you want from them? That'll obviously kind of decipher what cymbal that you're actually going for, but also how are you actually going to be using them. So I have the Paiste 900, which isn't on the kit at the moment, for some of the Tombstone Crow stuff. And as you can see, I'm really, really laying into it. It's actually one of the very few cymbals that I will continuously play on and sort of ride on throughout a track. And the reason for that is, you might actually remember this Sound Attack video, or if not, I will link it in the description. Are you filming? All right, good. That's good to know. I travelled down to Sound Attack to actually try out that whole series. What a fantastic day that was. But that cymbal was super, super thin, and it actually, still had a lot of power behind it, still cut really, really well. And what a thin cymbal actually allows is that if you're really going to be laying into it and braying on it, for a whole song or whatever it may be, you want a cymbal that is thin enough to be able to flex and actually channel that energy. If you've got a super, super thick cymbal, something really, really heavy, they're fine, they're great for one crash. If you're really putting some power into them, they'll cut tremendously well. Before Paiste, I had a set of Zildjian Z Customs, which were kindly given to me by my dad. And the funny story is that the Zildjian Z Customs are now Z3s. Really, really thick cymbals, really, really thick. And when you tap on them and hit them softly, you don't get much from them. When you really put some power into it, you're playing 2B sticks, heaviest you can, really putting some power, they sound phenomenal. They cut really, really well. What they're not good for, because they're thick cymbals, is playing on them relentlessly. So if you're playing full beats on them all of the time, they don't have they don't have any flex in there. They don't have the ability to actually take that constant energy going through the cymbal. And what actually happened was, this is the funny story, we actually lent out the Zildjian, actually it was the whole set, to my uncle, who played in a very, 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 very heavy sort of thrash band. And it was exactly that. It was constantly playing on cymbals, and there was a beat in one of the tunes where he was on the China, and constantly laying into the China for about 1.5 minutes. And we got the China back, and it was actually like the Mercedes-Benz logo, which was just basically in 3 pieces. The China, it was absolutely obliterated because it was so thick it couldn't channel the energy. I play the Paiste Rudes, and I play specifically the thins, so that if I do want to lay into them, I don't necessarily do it much on these crashes. Got the 900 for that because I'm too scared of breaking them. But they have the ability, they are super thin, and if you actually watch any videos in slow motion, I'm sure there's plenty out there, when you hit a cymbal, the amount of time that it does actually spend vibrating and kind of wobbling in that way is, you know, really actually opens your eyes to how much energy is going through the cymbal and how long that is constantly going through. And, you know, you just have to listen to the sustain. If you hit a cymbal, the sustain on that can be anywhere, you know, up to a minute, especially ride cymbals and these crashes. It's just beautiful sustain on them. But if you crash it once and then, you know, and you let it ring out, you'll see how long that is. But if you constantly bray about on it, there needs to be a way for a cymbal to let up. And something as thin as these, you know, they're still relatively thick and they carry fantastic sound to them. Absolutely love them. This is turning into a review for Paiste more than it is anything else. But they have the ability to take that energy basically. And so I've never, ever, ever cracked this 20. And I'm not to say I was glad I cracked the 18, but I'd much rather it be the 18 than the 20 because this is my favourite cymbal on the kit. So number 4 might be an obvious one, but it's actually handling cymbals and making sure that you're not dropping them basically. So you always play those gigs where, you know, pub gigs or whatever it might be, cover bands, you just played a couple of maiden tunes, whatever it might be, finish the set, there's always some drunk guy that'll come over, oh, all right, mate, I used to play drums about 30 years ago, yeah, I'll give you a hand, And he starts taking the cymbals off and you're thinking, oh my God, please don't. When a drummer asks another drummer, do you want help? You know the answer is going to be, don't worry about it, mate, you're all right. And what that actually means is, get the away from my drums. Well, you know, you always get one guy, or the singers. You never ever want to lift gear. You never ever want to help. But when you do, you always want to take a fucking cymbal off and you always want to drop it on the floor. It happens all the time. I don't know if it's just me or if it's a thing with singers, but they'll take the cymbal off and then they go like that and they go, bosh, straight on the floor. You think the damage that is going to do to that cymbal, especially when it's like it's always a concrete floor as well when they do it. Do you know what I mean? I think you might as well go right over it in the van with in the car park. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, be careful with cymbals. Probably the final thing, number 5, is temperatures. So as I mentioned in the video, very cold today, very, very cold, and it's freezing outside. These have actually stayed in the van overnight, a rather stupid thing to do, and I haven't hit them yet. I've been in the studio a few hours. They're still really, really cold. I'm letting them try to get up to, you know, room temperature. A sudden change of temperatures is bad enough, and I actually think this is what's caused the crack in this cymbal. So whilst Tombstone were on tour, obviously the cymbals were in the back of the van most of the time. They've then went into what was Trillions in Newcastle, very, very warm venue. They've came straight up the stairs and then they've basically been put on the kit and also played straight away, which doesn't help. The cymbals haven't had the ability to adapt, so to speak, to the room temperature. They haven't warmed up, and when they're cold, they lose a lot of flex, as I talked about earlier. They become quite brittle. Going from a cold temperature to a warm temperature in such a short space of time. It's why I haven't put the heaters on yet, letting the cymbals get to a sort of decent temperature in their own time. But then also, whilst the cymbals are cold, or if they've just gone from hot to cold, then putting some power into them. Never a good idea. I do think that's actually what's caused this 18 to crack, which is a very, very sad time, as you've probably guessed. Luckily, it wasn't the 20. If it was that, I think I would have cried. Genuinely would have shed a tear for that, mostly because I don't have the money to replace it. Wink, wink to Paiste there, little hint. But yes, all very, very nice cymbals. I love them loads, and I'm very gutted that this one's broke, but hopefully following my own advice, which I've been following for many years, and then now, just a week before this video, managed to not follow them and cause the cymbals to crack. But look after your cymbals. They do cost a lot of money, depending on obviously what you're going for. And yeah, that's pretty much it. A very quick video. I've got a few that I'm going to record today and get a few more of these episodes out there. So if there's anything else that you would like to hear about, learn about, or drummers that you would like me to speak with, then do drop comments in the comment section below. Comment below. Yeah, end of the video. Much appreciated. Thank you all very much for watching, and I shall see you in the next one.